Good evening and welcome this blessed Tuesday to the show, The Law and You. I'm your host, Kenneth Mbaabu from Kinyua Mbaabu and Company Advocates. As I promised you, this month of November, we'll be doing a series, the Family Series. These will involve issues around marriage, around children, divorce, succession, properties, and processes that we need to do as Kenyans for us to properly get married legally. The Constitution of Kenya that we passed in 2010, in Article 45, speaks on family. And the family, the Constitution and Article 1, talks about the family being the fundamental unit of the society. And in Section 2, that every adult has a right to marry a person of the opposite sex based on the free consent of the state, of the parties. Parties to a marriage also under 3 are entitled to equal rights at the time of marriage, during the marriage, and at the dissolution of marriage. And number 4 recognizes that Parliament shall enact registration to be able to cover all aspects of marriage. That is Christian, civil, Hindu, Islamic, and customary. The reason that the Constitution went to this extent is before the 2010 Constitution, apart from the Christian, the civil marriage, and also the Islamic marriage, other forms of marriages did not have a clear, outlined Act of Parliament to deal on the issues of marriage. And in the year 2014, the Parliament of Kenya passed the Marriage Act, which brought together all forms of marriages. And to take us through the Marriage Act and the forms of marriage and the processes that we need and what is needed for one to get married, we have today a very amazing guest, Milkah Kithinji Wakili. Welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the people.
Thank you very much, Wakili Mbaabu. It's a great pleasure to be here. As you have heard, my name is Milkah Kithinji, and I'm married to a young, handsome man called Kimani, and the name of the farm is Mutungi Kithinji, and you're welcome. And so it's a great pleasure to be here just to give more highlights, or, in terms of what it entails to get married under the Marriage Act 2014.
Thank you very much. I think the first question that maybe our viewers are asking themselves is, what types of marriages do we have in Kenya recognized by law? And I think, and is can we stay among those forms of marriage?
Thank you, Ken, for that question. That's a very pertinent question, because we are now living in an age where everyone has a right to do what you want to do, as long as you're 18 and you feel you have a choice. But legally speaking, there are only 5 kinds of marriages that are actually recognized by law. That is the Christian marriage, the civil marriage, the customary marriage, the Hindu, and the Islamic. Now, when you say, come we stay, or in better terms, come we experiment, that is not covered under the law, because there is no framework that the government has given to regulate that kind of setup. And so the government, in trying to address this issue and take into cognizance the fact that many people are actually choosing to come experiment or come we stay, and then, God forbid, if one of them gets or dies, then an issue comes up where should they be buried? Was the bride price or the customary rights followed? Comes up into play. If there are children that were born in that union, then an issue comes. Who do they belong to? Where do they go? And so what the government has been doing since 2014 is to encourage anyone who is in a come we stay situation, or you have been experimenting and the experiment ended and you realized you want to stay, to formalize your marriage into a customary marriage. And the government is encouraging citizenry to get their marriages formalized. And we actually agree with the government, because then that makes it easier to process issues thereafter. If there's death, if there's birth, if you're buying property, then it's very easy to, to regulate that situation, especially once you formalize it under the customary form. of
So
marriage.
what we are saying, if I can get you right, is that by the refusal of someone to get properly and legally married in any of these setups, you are setting us up yourself for failure in terms of identity and even ownership of properties. And sometimes where they will come 5-10 people after the marriage and say, we were the husband to this lady. I don't know if that happens, but most of the time is that we are the wife to this guy. So maybe you can take through people the types of marriage and how each one of them looks like.
So first, to answer your question is that indeed, when you fail to legalize or properly document the kind of engagement you're having with your spouse, be it a lady, be it a man, the Constitution is very clear that it has to be somebody of the opposite sex. So when you fail to legalize it, then you open a box that has very many possibilities. Anyone could come. Anyone could claim anything. But when you take time to actually legalize, and formalize that engagement, then anyone who comes has to challenge the legal setup that is already in existence. And so my work is cut out for me. I'll start with the Christian marriage. The law and you is basically based also on a Christian principle.
Yeah.
And if you want to get married, there are a number of things that would need to understand that both parties have to have consented.
Yeah.
You should not get married because, well, something happened and you got pregnant, or the girl is pregnant and now you want to cover up. That's not a good reason for you to get married. You should not be coerced. Or because she's from a certain home, then I have to marry her. No, it should be something that you're willing, consent, you have given your consent. You want to be engaged in that sense, legally binded for life to this person. So when you look at section 16, both parties have to profess the Christian faith. But when you talk about Christian faith, we have so many denominations. But what we're simply saying is that you have to profess the Christian faith. Then secondly, you have to make sure that there is no impediment that would give any reason to stop that marriage. So I'd give an example that you would not be saying, no one should come and say, this was my wife, or this was my husband, or we have children with them, and you have failed to disclose this. We're saying that in the event you choose to get married, you should come clean. Lay all your past, and say, I have 2 children, I was married before, the marriage didn't work, this is where we are, this is what is happening. So if you're getting married to me or you're marrying me, this is what you're getting yourself into. So all these things need to be put on the table. Then, once we have agreed and there is no impediment, we go to the person in charge. Now, in a Christian setup, you'd be going to the leader of your congregation and notifying them that you'd want to get married. Depending on the congregation, there should be counseling going on. After the counseling, you'd be required to also give a notification to the registrar of societies. Now, this notification needs to be done in good time. Most preferably, or what our advice would be, it should be not less than 3 months before the wedding date. Because if you go late, then there's a high probability that you are going to have, assuming you've already set a date, you may not get your approval in good time. So you need to do it in advance.
And you're not the only one who wants to get married in Kenya.
No, of course not. Yeah. In Kenya, there's a lot of love.
So there's a queue. That's the reason why you need to start.
Yes, you need to go early. And you know what the act says is that you need to give 21 days notice, and it's working days, meaning your Saturday and Sunday is not counted. So if we really count those days, it's actually like 35 days. It's over a month.
No.
You have to notify the registrar. So there's also an online process that has been introduced where you have to go fill in the form, give the details about your parents, print it, sign, scan, and load it back. Why I'm belaboring about this point is because this one touches us as Christians, and it's important that you do these things in good time. And when you give the notice, you also need to take the certificate of your pastor or the person who's going to officiate your marriage to the registrar, so that then it's very clear. Because then that will indicate what is the venue, who is officiating, what is the proposed date. And if everything is done in good time, then they will give you your date. One thing that we need to understand is that it is cheaper for you to have the wedding in church and not in the grounds. The cost for having your wedding in church is 800 shillings that you pay to the registrar. If you have to go to grounds, it's close to 8,000. So subject to what you want to, and how your budget is, if you want to go by the sea, it's okay, but you'll be paying around 8,000 shillings. You also need to understand that, for instance, you're a Christian and you want to celebrate your marriage and you're not in Kenya. The Act also provides for that all you need to do is go to an embassy, a Kenyan embassy, and get your marriage celebrated or solemnized by the people who have been appointed. But the issue of the procedure, you still have to give the notice and get the dates, everything that is required according to the law. Okay? Then now we have the civil marriage, where we are saying you are going to be married at the AG's office, the Attorney General's office. So we'd still give the notice, the 21 days, would still fill in the form. You see, this form gives the age, it gives the names, gives the parents, the kind of profession you do. It will also tell us, where do your parents stay, what kind of work do they carry out, and things like that. The form that you'd have prepared would be signed by both of you and lodged. The same procedure would go through in terms of giving you time to, giving you time in the sense you would have to wait for the registry to confirm if that date is available for you to be wedded at the registry itself.
This is what people used to call the DC.
Yes.
Going your marriage at the DC's place. Now it's the AG.
Yes.
Okay.
And what we need to understand is that the registrar can only give that notice or a certificate of saying there's no impediment. First, if there is consent between the parties, the two parties who want to get married, there is no impediment. There is no one who has objected to that in that sense. And you have also attained the minimum age of marriage. Minimum age meaning that you are 18 and above. You have an ID. So when we look at the Christian, when we look at the civil, when we go across these basic minimums, you know, your names, both parties are signing, you have the correct age, you have no impediments, run across, okay? They run across. But now, at the point of marriage, you'd be swearing when it comes to civil, the witnesses would also have to have signed the forms and appear with you on that particular day. So it's just 4 people going into the room in front of a registrar, and you'd be saying the vows one to another, and after that you'd be declared man and wife, and you sign the certificates and you leave. Now, the difference between the Christian and the civil is that for the civil marriage, you'd be doing it in that office. We come in, we do it, you leave. You know, once you're given the date. Whereas for the Christian, it is at a specific venue, either the church or some ground somewhere that you choose, okay?
So, I think before we move to the other types of marriages, I've heard that what you're saying, basically the civil and the Christian marriage, you start from the same place. The end is which is different, whereby you need first to fill forms at the AG's place. Then after that, you need to give a notice, 21-day notice to the AG. When that is done now, if you're going to the church, they'll give you a certificate of no impediment to your pastor so that your pastor can go and wed you. True. But now, if you're doing it at the AG's or what people used to call the DC's place, you will get a date at the AG's place and continue your wedding. And even now, the AG, even if you want to go to a garden and or hotel, it's just that what you are saying, you will pay more to have the registrar go to that wedding, garden, hotel, and be able to wed you. So basically what you are saying, the point of departure is the person officiating the wedding.
Yes.
Moja you'll be officiated na watu wa serikali wa AG. The other one is your pastor who will officiate you. But is it every pastor who can officiate?
No. Not every pastor can officiate. There are rules that, okay, so initially when they introduced the rules, is that those who had already registered, who were already officiating marriages, were given and had the booklets, needed just to return what the booklets they had, and they were given the new ones under the new law. But now the officiating pastors who are coming in now, what is required of you is that you need to be registered, one, you under a certain body, you know, like a certain
church,
church. So who are you affiliated to? So then we know that if you're officiating this wedding, there's somebody we can follow up in terms of what they're simply saying. We have to have that chain of accountability. Then we also you have to have attained a number of years in terms of experience in practice.
As a pastor, yeah.
As a pastor. So if you graduated from school yesterday, from Bible school, you cannot officiate a wedding because you'd have to have that experience. And then as we go on, I'll tell you the number of years. It has slipped my mind. But we also need to pay, because now you have to register, pay, meet the requirements that the registrar would want for them to list you as one of the pastors or ministers who can actually officiate marriages.
So what we are telling our viewers today, that kuna watu bonoko. So you have to be very careful that the person officiating your marriage is registered, is properly registered with Sharia House or the Attorney General to be able to officiate your marriage. Because as we were having a discussion, and you'll be able to see, there are components of a proper marriage. One is the person getting married, the two people getting married, the two witnesses, and the person officiating the marriage. These are the only 5 people needed in a marriage. May it be a Christian, Islam, Muslim, customary, all those 5 people. But for us Christian marriages, we love partying and eating and witnessing in presence of God and many witnesses.
Yeah.
So yes, maybe we have done with the officiating ministers who needs to be registered. We have done with the marriage and the civil. What are the types of the other marriages that we have?
Just before we move to the remaining 3, because they don't really concern us,
Yeah.
I want to raise an issue about objection. That once, you know, by the time you're being given a certificate of no impediment,
Yeah.
the 21 days notice is to enable anyone who has an issue to raise an objection.
So it's just not days. There's a reason why they are there.
There's a reason that anyone who has an issue should raise objection. If it is in church, they should see the pastor as soon as the banns are announced. They should see the pastor, tell the pastor, listen, this is happening.
So what you are saying, what we wait for on that wedding day, I come with 5 children, nasema huyu ni bibi yangu tumezaa naye watoto 5, should have been done then. At that point you are late.
Yes.
Because at this point, the registrar of marriages has given a certificate of no impediment.
Yes.
So what we are telling our viewers is this: if you have an issue of me getting married, say before the 21 days are done. And with that, the registrar of marriages will not give a certificate of no impediment that will enable me get married. I think that's a very, so that we stop these things. You have waited for people, committees or mechanga, people have food is cooked, mtu amevalia gown, hiyo time ndo unasema huyu alikuanga bibi yangu.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's important that you do it early. Even at the registrar's office, if you're doing a civil wedding, they would still take the process, listen to the accusations, call the parties, sit down, have them, the discussions go back and forth until they make a determination as to whether really this is, if the impediment that you're claiming has any justification. Now, there's customary law where we are saying that we'd be following the customs that are governing a certain community. So if a Kamba is getting married to a Meru, then there are certain conditions that have to be met. You have to, both parties have to meet. So we'd be saying that once the conditions have been met, all the parties need to do is follow the same procedure, fill in the forms, but while filling the forms, they would indicate that they are getting married under the customary law. Because then now they'd be saying, we are not being governed by the Bible, neither are we being governed by the laws of Kenya. We are being governed by the laws that are found in our community. Okay? And that is important that you are very clear about it, because the certificate would read that this is a marriage celebrated under customary law. Then we have the Hindu marriage. Both parties have to profess Hindu faith. It is paramount, okay? And you would still follow the same procedure, make sure there's no impediment, as you have said, that they are of the right age, and fill in the forms, take them to registrar, and the registrar would then give or officiate the marriage, and then deliver the record to the registrar. Sorry, I think I've said that wrong. What I'm saying is, once they have given the notification and they have received the certificate of no impediment, they would go to their temple and have the marriage officiated, and then bring back the certificate to the registrar for record keeping.
So it's the same thing also as the like the Christian marriage, same procedure.
Yeah.
The only now point of departure, you go to your temple, you go to church, and then you have it.
Yes.
Then there's the Islamic now marriage. Yeah.
Which would still follow the same procedure, but now we'll be saying the person officiating would either be an imam, a sheikh,
or a qadi.
A qadi.
Yeah.
And once the process is complete, you have met all the requirements that need to be met under Islamic faith, then, and the ceremony has happened, then you take the certificate back to the registrar.
Maybe a question I would like to ask, that we have seen, we have the Christian, the Islamic, the Hindu, customary and civil marriage. And all of them are controlled from the registrar of marriages. That's from the AG point. So what's the difference then? Because in terms, there are those marriages that one can marry many wives out of these 5. There's one you can marry only one. What's the difference? And which one? Among the 5, what's the difference in terms of marriages?
So when we look at the Christian, when we look at the civil, when we look at the Hindu marriages, you can they're called monogamous marriages. You can only be married to one person, mtu moja. Now, if you are feeling blessed and capable of maintaining many people, you go to the customary or you go to the Islamic that provides for 4 wives.
So for civil, Christian and Hindu marriages, you are only allowed to marry once.
Once. One person.
Unless you divorce,
yes,
and then you marry again.
Yes.
We'll be talking about divorce next Tuesday. So keep tuned. Then for Islamic?
For Islamic, we are simply saying, you see, the law provides an opportunity for them to marry 4 wives.
4 wives.
So, well, if you profess that faith, you're free to marry as many as 4.
And the customary?
Customary, we are saying that it's polygamous in nature. So there is no limit in terms of how many wives you can have. I think the courteous thing is just to give notice to the first wife. I am adding another one. Jipange, create space.
Then give notice to the 3 wives. I'm bringing a 4th one,
yes,
and a 5th one, and 6th one. Maybe another thing, maybe as we close up and wind up, our time is moving really fast. Can you decide now, I'm in a Christian marriage, but now I want to be polygamous. I want to add another wife?
No.
So if you have started with Christianity, Hindu and civil, it's forever and ever, amen.
Amen.
What we are saying now, but you from polygamous, can I be in a customary marriage and I change? I'm like, yes, it was potentially polygamous, but now I want to stick to one wife.
Yes, that you can. So assuming we start on the customary end of side of things.
Yeah.
And over time, we realize we love each other so much, we don't need another party in this engagement, isn't it? So we can go to the registrar of marriages and declare our consent to convert our marriage, that is
from polygamy
customary
to civil.
But
the catch, and I think this is very important, you cannot have 2 wives if you're in a customary marriage and decide, I'm taking wife number 1 or wife number 2 and convert, now I'm all alone in a civil marriage. So it's only possible. It's only possible if at the time you have thought that I want to come from polygamy to one wife, you have only one wife and both of you agree to it in writing.
Yes.
Maybe a recap as we wind up. There's the biggest issue at the registrar of marriages at the moment is a lot of people are going there when you want to get your certificate and you are told you cannot get your certificate of no impediment. And the reason is because the names on your birth certificate, if they do not match with the name on your ID or with your passport, at that point, utambo urudi, because the person getting married at the ID part and the person getting married at the birth certificates, it's not the same people. And now what happens is that, which I agree, at first I thought the registrar of marriages as a problem, but I came to notice, they say that you may come today as Kenneth Mbaabu, get married. Tomorrow I go as Kenneth Mbaabu, get married to a different person. And when they do the search, Kenneth Mbaabu is not married. Kenneth Mbaabu is one who was married. So because of that, please, if you know your names do not match, the time to change them is now before you get someone. Because those 3 months she talked about are not enough. The other question maybe is, maybe guys need to know, it's not even a question, it's just a comment, is that the AG's office are everywhere in this country. Talk to your pastor. Ensure your pastor has a certificate. Utaki siku ya harusi umeletwa na pastor amekuambia. There's someone who said the time for marriages a pastor would come and tell you where to jifanya una sign. Hii mambo mengine tutafanya baadaye. Which is true, but are you secure? Kuna pastors ambao there's a pastor who preaches spirit-filled, but if he's not registered, because at that point he's not a pastor. And I think one of the shows we need to do is the church and the law.
Yeah.
Because pastors need to understand that on the day of the wedding, they are not pastors. They are assistants registrar of marriage.
True.
So you cannot that day of the wedding tell someone, I'm not joining you because of A, B, C, D. You should have said that before giving out your certificate. Before giving out your certificate, you are a pastor. So according to our church, we want these tests, HIV, we want a test for pregnancy, we want ulete kukutano, na ulete mbuzi sita. You can do that.
And something for the pastor.
Yeah. But when you give your certificate, inapelekwa kwa AG, huwezi kuja na masheria. You are no longer a pastor at that point. You are an assistant registrar of marriage who is supposed to just be joining this wedding. Maybe in closing remarks.
If I may, I have come across a number of friends who got married way before me, but their certificates were never deposited with the registrar of marriages. So when they need to leave the country, they're saying we are husband and wife, they're asked, please give us a copy of your marriage certificate. The embassy in due diligence goes to check and finds that they are not registered anywhere. And so they have 3 children, they have bills, they have bought things, but they are not registered as man and wife.
This was coming in place, maybe to tell people where this comes. Before, now what we do is that the marriage starts from the AG's place. So you go, give your notice, and everything. But before, you used to come to the pastor he had a book, you will sign for you, give you one certificate. The second one, there were only 2. The second one, anasai kurudisha kwa AG with money. So now the problem, because maybe let's say they had a lot of work and they were not able to return that certificate. There's a lot to do. So because of that, you realize what she was saying. A lot of people, you are married here with a valid marriage certificate, but the government of Kenya does not know you are married. Luckily for the people who are being married under the new regulations, it is more aligned. And I think what you have said is very important. I think you need to have something else before you close, because that's very important. If you are married before 2014, please go to the AG's office, ensure your certificate is there. Otherwise, you are just walking around with a paper. Because there are a lot of people even have asked for a copy from the AG's. The AG cannot retrieve their copy because from their records, you never got married.
My parting shot would be that marriage works. And I think it's best that you start on the clean slate. Please, let's follow the legal process. There is no point of trying to experiment. Mnapendana sawa. Kujeni tu, we'll help you. It's very easy. And if you need more information, the AG's website has a very clear, detailed explanation of what you need to do at each step.
At each step.
So start early, pendaneni, oaneni vizuri, mkwe na certificate. Na Mungu awabariki.
Thank you very much, Milkah. Our parting shot was marriage works. Let us love each other. Let us get blessings from the church. But also let us be legally married in this country. Because when the Bible tells us we need to obey the rulers and the law of the land for us to have peace. We have been your hosts. I've been your host, Kenneth Mbaabu. And next weekend, next Tuesday evening, every day at 8 p.m., we'll be covering on the issues of divorce. Now we are married. Next is divorce and also children. What happens? Who goes with the children? Maintenance, custody of children, the issues of DNA. We have heard of them every now and then. All those things we'll be covering on the next show. The law and you. Kenneth Mbaabu. May God bless you and have a blessed evening.